Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of A&R Conversations Between Malaysian Youths. My name is Ryan. Joining me today is Adi, and we have a special guest for this episode titled Youth Participation in Nation Building.
Yeah, and today we have a very special guest by the name of Shaan Gom. He is from Penampang, Sabah, and he will be our guest speaker for today, and he will be discussing on youth empowerment based on his own opinions and his own experiences. Shaan himself is actually part of an NGO that is catered for youth empowerment. So I would just like to hand over the time to Shaan to give a brief introduction about himself.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for inviting me here. So hi guys, my name is Shaan. I'm currently around 22 years old, doing my degree in engineering. And as Adi has mentioned, I'm currently a co-founder of my own NGO called Project Ed Malaysia, whereby we're a student-run organization, and we strive to tackle education inequity towards Malaysian students through 3 different platforms, which are scholarship, workshops, and also digital mentorships. Yeah.
All right. So very interesting NGO, very good initiative. So very focused on grassroots, yeah?
Yeah. We're
Alright.
basically focused on grassroots movements.
All right. So as a first question, just want to lay down a broad stroke here. What is the current context for youth empowerment right now in Malaysia, based on your own experiences with Project Ed?
Okay, sure. To be honest, growing up in Sabah, there wasn't very much youth empowerment or youth initiatives that I could join, and all these youth initiatives are only made availably aware to me when I was based in Selangor. So I think that there's much more room for improvement in terms of youth empowerment, especially nowadays. As you can see, there's a lot of talks about youth empowerment in terms of the political landscape, in terms of youths governing their own country. And we can see from the recent Singapore election, Raisa Khan, if I'm not mistaken, that's her name. She's just 26 years old, and then she's the youngest to ever win in the election, if I'm not mistaken. So youth empowerment is quite an interesting thing. It's something that I think all youths should actually participate and should be made aware of the issues surrounding them. And as we are more going towards a civilized society, each one of us actually should play a role in making ourselves more aware of the situations that we are in currently.
And what would you say that from a grassroots level, how do you think this can tackle more wider issues? When you tackle the grassroots, do you think that this can help a trickle-down effect for more wider reforms in terms of youth empowerment?
Yeah. As mentioned by Adi before, because I'm currently involved in a lot of grassroots movement, ranging from Project Ed, Project Bawe, and also YCV. All these are grassroots movements. And personally, for me, if I were to give a bit introduction, the reason why I would prefer grassroots movements over other things is because personally, for me, I would like to see direct impact of the initiatives that I'm doing. So, for example, going down to the community and giving them workshops and giving them awareness about what is happening, you can actually directly see the impact compared to, for example, policy making, etc. And it actually can, and I believe it can make a butterfly effect of change, because everything starts from the grassroots. It goes through a bottoms-up approach that youths should I believe that a lot of youths actually starts from grassroots movements. When you're joining grassroots movement, it gives you this sense of, if I were to say, awareness of what's happening, like I mentioned before, that you're actually going to the community itself, talking to them, finding out their problems. And when you actually found out these stories, and these stories are the one that actually motivates you to actually create change. So when youths primarily are involved in grassroots movement, they are being more engaged in the society in terms of civic engagement towards their own people. It will actually create them a more sense of belonging when they're growing up, and then when they're actually in their workforce, etc. When they actually have this sense of belonging in them, it can actually inspire them to actually create more change indirectly. So I believe grassroots movement is actually something that a lot of people are actually looking down nowadays. They actually, whenever they see about these grassroots movements, they don't see direct. They often mistaken it for something that is not that powerful compared to, let's say, activism, etc. But I believe that grassroots movements are actually something that can really impact change to the society and to the nationwide.
So, Sham, pulling it back to the core message that we wish to, or the core topic of today's discussion, youth empowerment. It is to my understanding that both you and Adi met in the Parliament digital platform. So we see that Undi 18 has run. We have the online Parliament digital. Now, this sense of youths coming together, talking about the issues that the country faces, and besides this online Parliament digital, they have had hosted events in the actual Dewan Rakyat, in which they invited youths to debate and talk about political/social issues that the country faces. And I think it is pretty much similar in a sense towards what you do in Project ED and what youths do in the line of NGO work. Is a sense of coming together and talking about the issues that not just youths but collective Malaysians face.
Yeah, I don't think that's true. I don't quite agree with that. The reason being because when I joined Parliament Digital initially, it was for me to actually voice out my concerns that I see that is happening in grassroots movements, that through my involvement in grassroots movements. So when I actually joined Parliament Digital initially, I got the inspiration to join Parliament Digital because of the situation that I was living in Penampang, whereby a lot of youths are afraid to speak out, afraid to tell their opinions in terms of politics, in terms of policies, etc., etc. And when compared between Parliament Digital and my NGO Project Ad, it's completely two different stuff. So Parliament Digital is more on policies, and we actually talk a bit about politics as well inside of Parliament Digital. But then for Project Ad, we're a non-governmental organization whereby we're basically non-partisan at all. We do most of the grassroots movement, and we don't actually have any politics inside. We don't actually talk about politics at all. We basically just go down to grassroots, to the communities, and give out workshops. For example, last year we did one workshop in Semporna. And also we did a few workshops in Johor, Pahang as well. And these workshops that we do, as you can see, Parliament Digital is more like a platform for you to speak out your concerns, what issues are your community facing. But for Project Ad, we're actually going down to the grassroots to actually tell them to actually directly solve these problems and give people aware of it directly, more like the physical attributes. And we kind of cater more towards a specialized problem. We're already catered toward a specialized goal, which is fighting education to help with education equity, whereby most of our stuff that we're doing in Project Ad is towards this education landscape, according to the Malaysia's education blueprint. So the things that we're doing in Parliament Digital and Project Ad is vastly different, although quite similar, but very, very different as well. And of course, sometimes there might be times that politics would come into NGOs as well. We can't deny that politics is everywhere. Everything revolves around politics. But then as a youth movement, as a student-run NGO, we try to differ as much as we can. Try to be non-partisan in a way, because we want it to be more on directly. We want it to be a safe space for youths to come to volunteer, to actually directly impact their community without any political views or agendas. Yeah,
I think what you're doing is very inspirational for us youths who actually may not have the means or may not have the drive to go down and actually help assist their communities or the people around them. Pulling back to what you said about how your community engagements, trying to get in volunteers to help people with handling money, financially illiterate, and all these other projects. How is the process of getting funding involved? Because I'm pretty sure as an NGO, a student-run NGO, it's very hard to find people who are interested in supporting your cause, who are interested in donating money to help you champion in assisting your communities. So could you please share us your challenges or the uphill struggle that you may face on that front?
Sure. This is the unique selling point of Project Ad. I'm not sure if you know about this, but Project Ad's motto is for scholars by scholars. So what we do in Project Ad, how we get our funding is through students itself. So basically, to make it simple, is students giving out their money for other students to continue their studies. It's basically a student-run fund whereby we get around. We initially started with only 10 scholars. So we initially feel that the money that we received from our monthly allowance was too much for us, and we wanted to give it back. But we can't obviously give it back to our own scholarship body. That wouldn't make sense. So we decided to create a fund whereby 10 of us, we donate around 45 ringgit per month towards this fund. And within 1 year, we get few thousands of it, and we decided to give it back to underprivileged students who are in need, right? But then along the months, we garnered quite a lot of attention. And initially, it was just a student project. And now it became an NGO because of the vastly amount of donors that we have, ranging from students studying in Australia, in UK, Ireland. We have quite a few of them. So we try to give this sense of belonging towards students that even though you're in overseas, even though you're everywhere and you can't physically volunteer to be physically in the workshop, you can actually donate money, and then we can give this money to underprivileged students in need. And so far, we have awarded more than 100,000 ringgit of scholarship to our students as well. It's quite interesting in a sense that everything comes unexpectedly. So we also got, besides getting funding from students, we also get fundings through official sponsors. For example, Lenovo, and quite a few of different private bodies and angel donors as well. We're actually on Boost right now, the ePay wallet, and we receive donations from there as well. So the support that we receive from the community is very, 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 very big. I usually tell this as a joke to my friends that whenever we buy bubble tea, because I'm a huge bubble tea addict, so I told them something as in, whenever you buy bubble tea, you can actually try to not drink bubble tea and use that money to donate to us, so that we can use that money to sponsor other students in need, other students who have much more priority rather than bubble tea. So a lot of our scholars that we give out the money to are from B40 community. So these people are the ones that are affected the most in terms of they would need monetary assistance. We have students coming to us who are already doing their part-time jobs while studying, and it's really hard to do that in Malaysia. And we're giving them just monetary assistance to actually help them in terms of their lifestyle, help them as much as we can. And besides monetary assistance, we also give them learning and development modules that we crafted ourselves with help from actual people from the human resource team who are in the corporate world. So the help that we receive is quite tremendous everywhere.
Yeah, going back into Parliament Digital, because Shaan was the representative of his constituency, which is in Penampang, and I myself was the representative of Batang Lupar, which was in Sarawak. But the amazing thing that I found throughout this experience was that we were able to connect with like-minded youths on a non-partisan basis. And it was amazing to share all these ideas and find out that there are a lot of passionate youths. And given the opportunity that they could thrive, they can completely thrive in a scenario where policy making is involved, where nation building is involved. And I believe that going forward, I believe NGOs has a part to help precipitate this kind of empowerment, especially on the youths, as how Parliament Digital has helped empower me as well. So moving forward, I believe that NGOs has a role to play in trying to address localized problems, as what Shaan does, which is Project Ed. He is catered to a specific group, and I believe NGOs has a role to play in the future where government policy makes a blanket statement. When it comes to implementation, that may not be so consistent. So I believe further engagements with the NGO communities is a very good step in the right direction for the government of Malaysia to play a part in. With that said, do you believe that NGOs going forward has a much larger role to play when it comes to implementing what government aspirations are on the ground? Because I believe that government has probably half of the picture, but I believe NGOs which localize themselves, especially on the grassroots level, has the reality in hand. Do you believe that when it comes to even your NGO, that one day we could have, hopefully bring this up into the policy level so that the government of Malaysia can be able to help assist NGOs, help endorse all these non-governmental organizations to be able to implement effective change on the ground?
Yeah, I think currently NGOs has already a lot of weightage on their shoulders. But going forward, we have to understand that whatever the government policies are doing, whatever they're deciding, it actually affects a lot of the grassroots movement, whether we realize it or not. So I feel personally that going forward towards maybe 5 years later or 10 years later, I really feel that we should really hear the voices of people in the grassroots movement itself. As Adi has mentioned, that we actually know what is happening in our community, and which is something that Parliament Digital is doing as well. They actually pick people from their own constituency to voice out, and what we have to realize also that what your community is facing might be really different from what my community is facing. And I think that's one of the major thing that the government should keep in mind, that not everyone faces the same problem, and not everyone receives the same privilege as others as well. And if they actually listen to the grassroots movement, get their thoughts, or maybe actually create a special branch or a division that actually garners all this attention, garners all this knowledge from grassroots movements that could actually bring forth towards policy making. I feel that's a very, very, very nice thing to do. But to be realistically, in these maybe in this year, maybe next year, I don't think there's gonna be any sort of involvement in some sort of that way, because to be honest, our government is quite busy right now, and I don't think they're gonna put effort in listening to grassroots opinions. Yeah, but I do hope that in years to come that they will actually listen to our opinions as well. And I feel it's not impossible to do that lah.
I think it's pretty sad to see that the government is overlooking initiatives brought forward by the youths of Malaysia. Because I think that what you're doing, and I'm pretty sure many others are currently doing, is very inspiring and actually does help people on the ground in Malaysia, whether it be youths or whether it be just the ordinary worker. So what do you think the perception is of people when it comes to youth empowerment, when it comes to youth, college, university students starting their own initiatives, trying to make this country a better place in whichever field, helping out in social projects? Do you think there's still a stigma amongst these people to say that, oh, look, youths are really inexperienced, they haven't gone through life yet, they haven't started working? What do they know of the issues on the ground? What do they know of people's needs? What do you say to these kind of people?
Yeah, I actually agree. I can share some personal experience of mine. I went to this one networking event to represent Project Ed in this NGO networking event. And when we actually present ourselves, when I presented myself as the co-founder of Project Ed and how it is actually a legal NGO, we have all the documents in hand. Most of them, especially those from the older generation, they're quite they don't really believe it, that a student can actually start their own NGO in Malaysia, that we can actually sustain ourselves more than 2 years in the running. Because most of them just think that, okay, we don't have any experience yet, we don't know what we're doing, which I admit, most of the times we don't know what we're doing. But that's the fun thing about being a student and about being a youth, is that we learn along the way, we learn from our mistakes. And if we can learn from our mistakes now, what else when we already graduated? We can actually create better impacts. So I believe that, especially to the older generations, rather than giving us condescending looks or looking down on us, might as well just help us along the way, give us advice and help us, especially in terms of running our own youth initiatives or how to actually make it more implementable and sustainable as well. It's kind of sad knowing that it's not only towards the older generation, but there are quite some weird thoughts from our own generation as well. Yeah, it is true that there's a lot of youths who are actually joining volunteering activities to make their resumes look good. But my advice to them is, please don't do this. Please have a clear intentions in mind, especially when you go towards volunteering activities, when you involve yourself in grassroots movements in rural areas. When you don't have this good intention in mind, people can actually see through you, and that's a bad reputation to have, and that's a bad perception you're giving to, for example, younger generation of students that you're doing the workshops to. When they know that you have bad intentions in mind, when they can see right through you, they won't have you might actually affect their lives going on. So have a clear intention in mind. Please have a good heart, and it's not only for your CV. Think of the bigger cause that you're contributing to.
Yeah, I agree 100%, Shan. I believe that passion is a very essential ingredient when it comes to volunteering work or any kind of NGO work. Yeah, and I also agree on your point when it comes to the stigma from the older generation. Because if we don't give the chance for the youth to learn from the get-go, then they're gonna have to learn on the job, and it'll be even more frustrating for everybody when it comes to making mistakes on a much larger scale. So I believe that mistakes is a natural thing, but however, I believe that mistakes can be started on the ground so that we can learn and prepare ourselves in the future. And I believe the older generation has a part to play in trying to guide us, to help us understand the reality of what we're going to go through, because they have walked a path that we have yet to take. Regardless, as a Sabahan, what would you hope to see going forward, especially in the context of Sabah? What do you feel can be done more on the Sabahan context, since you come from a very engaging background within Sabah itself? What would you hope to see when on particular issues in Sabah? Do you believe that any calls should be taken that can be done by NGOs? Because for the background, when it comes to Sabahan development, I noticed that a lot of the things that the state government isn't able to provide, NGOs have to make up for those kinds of deficiencies. What kind of particular issues do you hope to see being brought up from the Sabah side?
Okay, sure. Thank you for the question. First and foremost, I wish that people would be made aware of our existence as Sabahans, in the sense that we're here and we're part of Malaysia as well. When I came to Selangor initially, it was quite a shock to me that people would have these bad perceptions towards Sabahans, and that's completely not true. One thing that I could share with you is I'm currently a scholarship holder of it's quite a prestigious scholarship, and in the period of 10 years, I was only the second Sabahan to receive that scholarship. It comes as a shock to me, and I actually asked my scholarship manager why was I'm the only second Sabahan to receive it, especially when they actually try to they talk about wanting to help the B40 community. And they mentioned to me that it's not that they don't want to help us, it's because we don't reach out to them. And that's an issue that I feel is especially from Sabahans, we can't reach out is because we don't have the platform to reach out. We're being closed into this bubble of not wanting to go outside to explore. Most of our opportunities are deprived for us, especially as students and as youths. You can actually count how many youth organizations are there in Sabah, and there's not much. We don't have that opportunity to grow. And the only way for you to grow, one of the only way for you to grow, is for you to go to Selangor, to go to KL, and to find opportunities there. And that creates a talent drain in our community, that most of our smart and talented people are actually in KL itself and not in Sabah. So what I wish that the government could do is as I mentioned before, to actually think of the people first. I know that politics might be in the way of this, that of course politics is everything. But I wish that they could listen to their people first and make known that their people are actually way behind. Research actually shows that Sabah is 30 years behind the development of Selangor and KL, and I feel that's really a sad thing. Knowing that Sabah has a lot of natural resources, we have a lot of tourism spots as well, and I feel that we could use these things to build up our community. But the sad fact is, politics is in the way. As you can see, 2 years ago, suddenly Sabah has 2 chief ministers, and this politics turmoil affects the whole Sabah itself. And I could say this, especially in the rural parts of Sabah, the people are made. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, or maybe it affects other people as well. But I feel that we're so left behind that we are made thinking that it's okay to be left behind. We are made thinking that it's okay to be normal, it's okay to be left behind, because that's what you're brought up to believe. And when I only realized that this is not okay when I came to Selangor and was exposed to a lot of different opportunities. So I really wish the government could actually focus more towards development in their own people first, listening to their own people voices, make our voices be heard, and not only because of politics, because of money, and because of fame, but especially I wish that the government would actually be for the people.
Yeah, I'd like to agree with what Sham mentioned just now on how we see that East Malaysia has oftentimes being left behind when it comes to development or awareness of the situation on the ground. But I think that's a whole other issue for another time. We've come to the end of our podcast. I'd just like to say a really big thank you to Shaan for joining us today and sharing a lot more about his involvement in youth NGOs and his involvement in his community, and to also share his thoughts about how youths are progressing in Malaysia and how we can better ourselves as youths who will be the future generation of leaders of our country. Also, Shaan, for our listeners who do listen to this podcast and who might have an interest in contacting you and joining you in one of your initiatives, how could they go about doing so?
Sure. You guys can connect to me through my LinkedIn. I'm quite active there. It's Shaan Gom. It's SHANGOM, and you guys can just give me a heads up from where did you know me from, etc. Or you guys can even hit me up on my Facebook. Shaan Gom is the same thing, and also my Twitter is also Shaan Gom. But I post quite depressive stuff on Twitter. So if you like depressive stuff, you can check me on Twitter as well.
Thank you so much, Shaan, for joining us today. If any of our listeners here would like to participate or even try to reach out to Project Ed, how would they reach out to you?
Thank you so much for having me today. Yeah, if you guys are interested in learning more about Project Ed, you guys can search us on Google. It's Project Ed Malaysia, and we have our own website, projected.my, or even on Instagram, it's projected_my. And we're actually on TikTok right now, and we're growing very fast on TikTok. So do see our TikTok. It's very, very informative.
Yeah, with that said, I would just like to thank the listeners for tuning into this episode. We'll be releasing our regular episodes every fortnight as usual. So please tune in. We will probably have maybe, like Shaan mentioned, when it comes to East Malaysian politics. Perhaps we would be touching on that very, very soon. Very pertinent issue, which I would consider as very critical in the nation's development going into the future. So for our own personal plug, if you guys also would like to get in contact with me and Ryan, we're both quite active on our Instagram pages. So you can find me on Arif Adiputra, ARIFFADIPUTERA. And also you can find Ryan on Instagram, which is RYAN.SUA. So if you have any suggestions, feedback, or just want to give us a heads up of what we do, we really appreciate that. And with that, we just like to say thank you to the listeners. Without you, we wouldn't have really made this happen, and me and Ryan wouldn't have really pushed forward to keep on making these episodes for you guys. So we really do appreciate our listeners for tuning in every fortnight.
Maybe we need to create an OnlyFans page.
Hey, I think Ryan can.